And we are at the top of the hour, and so I want to be respectful of everyone's time. And so, welcome to American Family Insurance DreamBank, where we believe in the transformative power of dreams. I'm Madeline, and I'm thrilled to have you with us today. Here at American Family Insurance, we believe communities are stronger and the future is brighter when people are actively pursuing their dreams. That's why we created DreamBank, an inspirational community destination and digital experience dedicated to dreamers everywhere. From our daily event series to immersive signature programs, there's something for every dreamer. Our always free offerings are designed to help you celebrate your dream journey, overcome obstacles, and stay motivated. Now, I'd like to introduce you to today's speaker. Abby is a podcaster, social media creator, and Down syndrome's advocate. She left her corporate job in 2021 for full-time entrepreneurship, so she knows a thing or two about imposter syndrome. As a social media creator with a large community, she also understands how many people struggle with self-doubt, and she wants nothing more than you attendees today to pull the confidence back in. All right, take it away, Abby.
All right, I'm excited about this. And even before we got started, we had a great conversation about just where imposter syndrome shows up in our own life. So don't think just because I'm giving a presentation on this that I have zero imposter syndrome. However, I do have ways and strategies to get around it. I'm going to teach you all of those things. So when we think about imposter syndrome, it really is the fear of failure that is keeping us in this chokehold. However, I want to reframe it because it's not the fear of failure. You might think that it's the fear of failure, but it's honestly what other people think of you or think of your failure that you're actually fearing. And you might be like, Abby, no, absolutely not. I'm a, Enneagram 3. I'm an achiever. I'm a person who instantly, like whatever goes wrong, I'm going to blame myself. Okay. But if no one ever saw those mistakes ever, and I'm thinking back to like when you were like 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 years old, would you still have that mentality? Well, according to the research, you probably wouldn't. And I white knuckled it as well. But after learning about imposter syndrome and how we actually do have control over it, I started feeling a heck of a lot better. So what does it feel like? I don't need to label all of these off, but it's things like self-doubt, it's anxiety to overachieve, it's feeling inadequate, it's just focusing on the negatives instead of your progress, it's never asking for help. And like as you read through this list, you might be nodding your head and being like, "Oh yeah, okay. I attribute my success to luck. Okay, yep. I have that inadequacy feeling." And so if you do have any of these, know that you're in the right place. And by the end of these 30 minutes, we're going to have you feeling a heck of a lot better. I mentioned childhood. I mentioned when you were 2 or 3 or 5 or 10. And a lot of times, imposter syndrome really can start with the little things in childhood. Things like doubting yourself of, can I go across the monkey bars? Can I go across the monkey bars? And then being like, nope, I can't, and not even trying. Things like minimizing yourself, speaking more quietly, going to the back of the classroom, trying to make yourself look smaller. That A- feeling of never being good enough, where it's like, okay, I did a really great job. I improved from last year, or I got a 99 on my test. Oh, but I could have gotten a 100. There's also this pressure to achieve. Maybe it comes from internal pressure, maybe it's from parents, maybe it's from a coach, but that can be real. And it can definitely add to the idea of what imposter syndrome can feel like in adulthood. And then finally, that good kid mentality. You're always trying to be the good kid. You're always trying to be the good one. You're always trying to be nice. And it can put a lot of pressure on that little child that is still inside of us. So, right now, you might be like, okay, so that's childhood, but what does it look like now? Maybe for you, you started on a path, but you haven't done a check in. So maybe for you, imposter syndrome is coming up with something very specific. Maybe it's parenting, maybe it's work, maybe it's something very specific within work. That's a very real feeling. And imposter syndrome might not be overtaking your entire life, but it could be something very specific. But have you done a check in? Because maybe you also got slightly off path and now you're walking in a completely wrong direction. You know, when you're like, okay, I'm going to try this, and I'm going to try this, and I'm going to try this. And then all of a sudden you're literally off all the way over here when you're supposed to be going straight. So I just want you to do a check-in with maybe the places where you are feeling the imposter syndrome come up. And honestly, it's easier to do it when you're in your day-to-day. Right now, you might be like, okay, that's a lot of pressure. I don't want to think about all those pieces of imposter syndrome. That's okay. But in your day-to-day, when that starts to pile up and you're like, okay, this is feeling uncertain. This is feeling like I don't have confidence. When is that showing up? Because what I want you to do in those situations is instead of thinking about, I can't do this, I'm not going to start, whatever thoughts come to mind, instead, do your roadmap. Figure out, what do you want your finish line to be? Figure out those guideposts along the way to get you there. And then figure out if your starting line is where you are. Because sometimes you might not be at your starting line. You might need to do a few things to get there. Other times you realize that your finish line is completely different than the one you're on right now. But what this does is it really helps you figure out how to get from here, like where you are right now, to where you want to go, but you do it in reverse. So you figure out, what is that end destination? What is that end goal? And then you figure out your next steps to get there. Because when you really do start working on your own blueprint, when you create your own design, when you create your own timelines and what those guideposts look like, the imposter syndrome, it doesn't feel as heavy. Because you can actually replace it, all those negative thoughts, the procrastination, the I'm not getting started, the I can't do this. You can replace those with facts, things that are true, and actions, actionable steps that you can actually take to move forward. Okay, so let's just get into this, because at DreamBank, I mean, I loved that beginning conversation that Madeline brought up about the dreams that you have. And our goal for you in this DreamBank presentation is to be a person who trusts yourself, who is proud of yourself. You stand up for yourself, not somebody who is, cowering away, getting so nervous, being like, maybe not. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. That person. And maybe you do that right now. I've done that too. I'm in the Midwest. Okay. Midwest nice is a real thing. When you bump into somebody, or they bump into you rather, and you're like, I'm sorry, even though they were the ones that bumped into you. Okay. I can totally relate to that one if it's you. But I also want you to be somebody who, when you look at your calendar, you agree with what it's filled with. You're in agreement that the things you're doing during your day are the things you want to be known for, the things you want to be having as your guideposts. You want to change for the better, because we're always changing a little bit, but you're changing for yourself. And you're not changing because you want someone else to think it's good. You're changing because you yourself want to make those changes. And this last one is my favorite. I really will talk about that 8-year-old version of yourself quite a bit, because it has a lot to do with who you are today. But I want that 8-year-old version of yourself, that person who's in 2nd or 3rd grade, to really love yourself and to be proud of who you become. But I also want that 90-year-old version of you to look back and be like, yes, you are on the right path. So if you ever are getting lost, I think that that's a really good exercise. As a coach myself, that's one that I bring a lot of my coaching clients on, of what would your 8-year-old self say about where you are right now? And how would your 90-year-old self steer you? Keep on that same path, or would it be a little bit different? So I want you to think about these questions now. And you can do the 5 fingers, where you have your 5 fingers up and just put down a finger for everyone that you have. You can do it quietly by yourself. You can mark them on a piece of paper, whatever feels real to you. But when things go wrong, do you blame yourself? When you make a mistake, do you have a hard time forgiving yourself? After a conversation, are you someone who obsesses over what you said or how you said it? Do you remember every dumb thing you've ever done? And then do you take feedback personally? And if you want to, you can pop into the chat if you feel comfortable enough being like, yep, I need to be here. Because if you have answered to 2 or more of these as a yes, just be like, yep, that's me. You don't have to say which ones they are unless one really, really rings true to you. But you'll notice here that a lot of people are here. A lot of people are facing imposter syndrome. These thoughts are not thoughts that just no one has. A lot of times it's like, oh my gosh, am I the only one who's thinking this way? Am I the only one? No. You're somebody who views mistakes as something being wrong with you, instead of you just being human. So we're going to dive into all things of what makes you human and why we need to reframe this idea of imposter syndrome. Okay, so self-trust. There's a really big difference between wanting someone's opinion and then actually needing their approval. Okay, you can be like, okay, I want to know your perspective on this. I want to know how this feels for you. And then maybe it'll change little pieces of how you're going to change things. But if it's literally going to dictate your next steps, imposter syndrome is winning. You're not letting your self-trust actually win. Where are you trusting yourself more than others? Is there certain situations where it comes up more? I'm guessing those are the places where you're feeling less confident. Those are the places where imposter syndrome is showing up. But when you trust others more than yourself, you're just giving right back into what it exactly wants. Imposter syndrome wants you to stay safe. And sometimes staying safe means failing. Because if you succeed at something that isn't very safe, isn't very familiar, that means you're going to do more of it. And a lot of our brain and a lot of our body wants us to stay exactly where we are because that is what feels safest. As we all know, it really doesn't matter what other people think of you. It matters what you think of you, but it's a really hard truth to face and to actually take actions on. And we know this, but if you let other people's opinions control your life, it's going to lead you in the wrong direction. And also with blaming others. So if you can take accountability and take responsibility and start to make the change that feels real, that's where you're going to start to get ahead. So even think about some of the things they might be like, somebody else is always I'm the victim, someone else is always the one to blame. Or if they just did this differently, then okay, it's not wrong to think that way. It's human to think that way. But we also know that it's keeping us where we are and not from moving forward. There are 5 types of imposter syndrome. We're going to go through a few of these today. We don't have time in the 30 minutes to go through all of them, but these are the ones that Dr. Valerie Young has shown to be the most popular, if it's lack of a better term, types of imposter syndrome across the board. And they are the perfectionist, the expert, the natural genius, the individualist, and the super person. And so going into each of these, the perfectionist, you might look at one of these and say, that's absolutely me. You might look at a few of these and say, I'm actually kind of a combination of a few of these. So these are good ones that if you want to take a photo, if they start to ring true, I want you to take a photo of not only this screen, but the next screen, because the next screen is going to be the reframe that's going to help you get out of the imposter syndrome that's attacking this type of person. So the perfectionist says, I can do better. Anything that you're doing, you can always do better. They say that they need to have everything right, so they're taken seriously. As a parent, this is the person that is color coordinating their kids' clothes. The birthday parties are 100% perfect. Everything in their house is, completely aligned. The lunch is going to be completely balanced. Or they slide into the idea of, I'm going to go completely the other direction and eat greasy fast food. I'm not even going to put on a birthday party this year because if I can't get it right, I'm not going to do it at all. That's the perfectionist mindset. So if this feels real to you, this is the screen I want you to take a screenshot of. The perfectionist reframe is you can hold high standards. We're not taking those away from you. I myself am a perfectionist. This is the one that I feel it in my bones. We can hold our high standards, but I want you to get rid of the shame when you fall short. You are going to fall short. I know that's hard to hear, perfectionist, but you are going to fall short because you're human. The expert is next. So this is one where success, it should be effortless. If it doesn't come naturally to me, I'm probably not going to do it. It's somebody who is pushing off their decisions until they've made a perfect pros and cons list. They have done every single bit of research. They know every single answer, A, B, C, and D, to every piece of it 100%. This person also has very, very high standards, and they have no grace in learning through experience. The trial and error, that doesn't take place. You're going to read the books so that when you do it, you're not making any mistakes. So the expert might sound a little bit like the perfectionist, but they're really relying on books and information instead of their own gut instinct. So if this sounds like you, the reframe is you can keep your desire for mastery, but you got to realize it's going to take some time and it's going to take some effort in order to get there. Okay, so you can keep this. We're not going to take your mastery away from you. The experts, they are the ones that are leading businesses. They are the ones that are just on top of the world. They know their niche. They know their information. They know it so well. But you also got to know that it's not going to happen overnight. In order to really be the top of the top of the top, it's going to take some time and it's going to take some mistakes to get there. The individualist. This is the last one we're going to go through in this piece of it. This is the person who really has some fear of asking for help. They think, if I can't do it by myself, I'm just not going to do it. There's no point in asking anybody else. It shouldn't be done by me if I have to ask somebody else. This is a person who also is probably saying yes quite a bit. They might fall into some people-pleasing tendencies. They know that their capacity is high, but they don't know how far they can actually stretch it. So they're saying yes to everything. And it's a person that can go from, I'm fine, to complete burnout literally overnight. It's the parent that pretends things aren't hard. Oh, I got this. No, I can do it. I'm fine. Sure, I'll pick up your kids as well. Oh, just another couple of children at my house. Not a problem at all. This is a person who also is needing to succeed in everything they do. If they're not going to be good at it, they're not going to do it. And everything that they do, they're going to be the top of the line. And they're going to be known for it because they are the ones that are rising to the top, not because of anybody else. Okay, if this rings true for you, your reframe is you can take pride in knowing you can do it on your own if you need to, but just don't think you have to. Okay? Yes, there are so many things that you can go so fast with if you're on your own, but just know that you don't have to do it on your own. It's okay to be in community. Of these three, which ones rings true for you? If you want to drop it into the chat, I think that'd be really helpful for other people to see. So the individualist, the perfectionist, or the expert. And I'm going to plug my computer in while you guys chat. Okay, so I'm seeing a little combination here. I'll also get to some of these questions that are in here too. Individualist, the expert, perfectionist, a little bit of everything. I can see that too. Yeah, and these are the ones where when we're seeing each of these pieces of it, it's like there are a lot of people that are facing these types of things. You're on this for a reason, right? We're trying to learn. There's also a lot of people who didn't even show up to this today because they're thinking, I should be able to do this on my own. I should be able to figure this out without a presentation. That person's probably an individualist, if you ask me. And then at the end, I will answer these questions. Madeline, I think that you're taking a combination, or I think you're going to be taking a few of those. So I'm going to close out this chat, and then we'll get to the rest of those comments at the end. Okay, so how do we rewire imposter syndrome? How do we actually rewire it? And when we rewire it, it's not just like, oh, I'm going to listen to this random lady named Abby from Madison on this DreamBank presentation. No, it's neuroplasticity in our brain. It's actual concepts within our brain. And what we have to do is we have to form a new pathway. And we do this through practice over and over again and through actual work. So neuroplasticity means that we can make change. So as humans, we have the ability to make change at any point in time. The whole idea of you can't teach an old dog new tricks, that's not true with humans. What it is true though is that it doesn't happen overnight. And how you do it, this is with habits, it's with any type of addiction, it's with things that you really want to change. Every time you perform that habit or thought, it's going to make a little bit of a difference every time, negatively or positively. So let's say you have a habit, for instance, eating cookies at night, okay? Every single time you eat those cookies at night, if it's part of your goals, for instance, to not eat cookies at night, maybe your goal is to eat cookies at night, but let's say you have a goal to not eat cookies at night. Every single time you say, I shouldn't do this, I'm not gonna do this, I really wanted to switch to Greek yogurt instead, or I can have those cookies, but maybe just like once in a while. Every time you're like, but tonight I'm going to. Every time you give in to that habit, it's strengthening that pathway. It makes it a little bit harder to get rid of it, to get rid of that pathway that you have formed. But we can pave new roads that our brain can become comfortable with. It is so uncomfortable not eat those cookies, okay? I love eating cookies at night. I love it. However, our brain says it's more comfortable to eat those cookies than to resist the urge to not to. Same thing with imposter syndrome. It's way easier to be like, you're right. I stink at this. I'm just not going to do it. Way easier than getting on that stage and doing the public speaking event. Way easier than talking to your friend about that hard conversation. Way easier than going to that work meeting and saying what's actually on your mind, trying for that promotion, going for that job interview. That is hard. It's hard for our brain and it's hard for our pathways. But if you do that new road over and over again, the old pathway fades and the new one gets easier. So how do we update this? Number one, we have to shift our view of failure. Okay, our view of failure is deeply ingrained, just like any habit. Everything I'm talking about here can literally be used with a habit as well. So if you want to take screenshots of any of these, or again, the notes that Madeline had you pull out, know that these are rooted and they're deeply ingrained. So think about an old belief. Maybe it's an experience, maybe it's a word, maybe it's something that your parents said over and over again that might be the cause of some of this discomfort, this self-doubt, this lack of confidence, this imposter syndrome. Maybe it's something that a coach said. Maybe it was an embarrassing moment. Maybe it was disappointment of something you said at work that you weren't taken seriously and now you never want to do it again. For some people, they might have a positive way of looking at it where someone says success is the only option and it's literally ingrained in their mind they can never make a mistake. Or if I fail, what does it mean about me? And so these are the things that we may have had as a child. I mean, yeah, Barbara, that's a really good point. You failed something, an important test, and in your mind, it's still there. That test is still there. Linda, I love what you said. You're considered weak if you ask for help or you don't succeed. I know that a lot of people are thinking that way. Like these are the pieces that they stick with us long beyond the situation, the word, the phrase, the thing that happened. Number 2, shifting the way you process feelings. So feelings are not the same as objective thoughts. Okay, I learned about this in coaching. We can be like, well, duh, of course it's not the same as a thought. In our body, a feeling can feel like a thought. A feeling can feel like a true statement. A feeling can feel like an actual fact. A feeling is just a feeling. It really is about shifting how we interpret those feelings, because it's a lot harder to be like, oh, just be calm. Like my husband, he says that, oh, just calm down. Worst thing to ever tell somebody, by the way. Don't ever tell somebody just calm down. You're not going to get a calm person from that. But what can you do to interpret the feelings that you have? Could I take some deep breaths? Could I understand that it's just a toddler that's running around me and not a bear that's trying to chase me into the woods? How we interpret those feelings is much easier to do than changing the feeling itself. And also know that two people can look at the same situation and feel a completely different way. Like a roller coaster, for instance, public speaking, for instance. Some people might love roller coasters that are watching this right now. Think it's the absolute most fun. Other people can look at the exact same roller coaster and be like, no way, get me off of this. I'm not even gonna get on it. The same thing is with public speaking. I mean, I think that is one of the stats is that it's in the top reasons people would rather die than public speak. And then there's other people that are just doing it as their job. They do it so much because they love it. I personally love public speaking. It's one of the things that brings me joy because I know how much good can come from it. Reframing it is the most important thing we can do to help rewire. So what does that actually look like? You can look at the feelings in a way that's helpful to you. Maybe think about how would you explain it to a dear friend or maybe a child. And that's going to help you carve the new way of thinking. So what it could look like is there's this discomfort, right? Think about something that feels really uncomfortable. Oh no, I've never done this before. I don't know what I'm doing. That's what imposter syndrome feels like, right? I don't know what I'm doing. I've never done this before. The things that are true are, yes, you have never done this before. You might not know what you're doing quite yet, but that discomfort can be changed into, no, you've never done this before, but you're safe. Just take it one step at a time and you can learn how to do this. Everything in this is true. You have never done this before. You don't know what you're doing, but you're reframing it in a way that your body feels safe. And you actually know the next step, the next action to do in order to get ahead. The third of this is shifting those unhelpful thoughts. Some thoughts are valid, but I'm going to tell you they're not 100% truthful. It's not black or white thinking. Some of the thoughts that come into your mind, like, oh, I probably shouldn't say that. Okay, maybe you shouldn't say that really mean thing to your boss that you want to say, but could you say something that still gets the message across in a way that you feel safe or that is going to help you feel better? Maybe you're not going to call him a bad name or call her, name something that she has done in the past, but what is something you can do to make sure that your voice is being heard and that you're not shrinking yourself away? I also want you really to be challenging these thoughts with intentionality. And what does this mean is I want you to really think about it. Be like, okay, is this my brain keeping me safe? or is this real life? And so, as a last thought here, before we get into some of these questions, a task, I always love to leave these presentations with something you can do right away, something you can do immediately right away. And if hopefully you took some notes of just some tangible tips that you can start doing. But if you are facing imposter syndrome, you might also be somebody that has a to-do list and you're looking at all these things and you're thinking, I can't do any of these. I don't even know where to start. Or your to-do list is full of things that you don't really want to be doing. So the new goal is to not overwhelm that to-do list. What we want to do and focus on instead is big picture. Okay, focus on big picture. Where do you want to be heading in this life? If it is applying for a new job, don't think about all the 50 million things that you could be doing right now with updating your LinkedIn profile, going on info meetings, interviewing people at other positions, updating your resume, changing out your bio, fixing that cover letter, asking this person, going to this connection, going to these networking. Yes, there's so many things you can be doing. But big picture, what are the right things you can be doing right now in order to get there? Those guideposts that we talked about at the beginning. What is that next guidepost that you can do instead of thinking about every single thing that you need to be doing? And most importantly, get rid of the busy work. I know it feels so good to check things off of your list because you're like, ooh, I just did 30 things today. Sorry to tell you, if you didn't do one important thing, I don't care about the 30 other things that you did. What are the really big, important things, the big rocks that are going to move you forward? And if you are facing imposter syndrome, I'm going to tell you the busy work, it feels really good, okay? It feels really good because it builds confidence knowing that you're checking out these little things. But also to rewire imposter syndrome, you need to do the big, hard things in order to keep moving forward. So as we finish up here, I want to make sure that I'm answering some of your questions. DreamBank, if you have any of the ones listed down or any comments that showed up that you're thinking, okay, this could be a light bulb moment for some people, I would love if you started sharing them. And I actually like this very, very last one. Brenda, you'd mentioned you could totally guide your best friend through these tips, but how can you get through them yourself? I think that's one of the best tips. And it's so simple, right? If you are a parent yourself and have a small child, if you have a best friend, if you have a really, really close person that you're talking to, maybe your close friend or colleague is going through the same issue as you, and you're able to walk him or her through something so easily. But when it goes back on yourself, you're giving yourself a hard time. Yeah, that's a nice little mindset reshift.
A lot of people identified with being a perfectionist.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking through, I didn't see any true questions pop out, but definitely the perfectionist is standing out. A few individualists, which I myself fall into that camp, so I feel very seen. Um, but any questions in the chat other than um, what has been, some of them have, the topics were wonderfully covered. I'm scrolling back down, but really no questions that I can see, but I do want to share one resource that we have coming up. Um, and we are doing a academy course starting in July, and it is all about making time for what matters. And so if you find yourself not having time to maybe tackle those big rocks or letting your to-do list kind of get away from you, I just put a link in the chat for the registration for making time for what matters most. We are going to, it's going to be a 5-week immersive course, and I know I really benefit from it. And so that is a resource coming up. And we do have a question that came in. What is the first action step in finding out what the big picture goalpost is?
I like this question because it's something you can literally do right this second, and it's getting really quiet. Because another thing with imposter syndrome is so many of us are trying to pull in information from other people, from books, from even our past experience, and we're just trying, there's information overload. And so when you think about the guideposts and what you need to be doing next, sometimes when you get really quiet, almost to the point of boredom, when you're thinking, am I doing this right? I'm getting kind of bored. On the other side of boredom is usually where your creative spirit and where your brain can actually start working. And usually that's when it gets pretty obvious on what you shouldn't be doing, which I know that's not the answer because all these things you shouldn't be doing, but it helps narrow down what you could be doing instead. I think that also just really focusing on what that end goal is. And then, I mean, if you need to talk to somebody who's already been through it, I think that's a good step. But I would first and foremost listen to what yourself could do and what you could be doing in that process. Yeah, I like this one about the corporate America. I was in corporate America for a very long time before switching over to entrepreneurship, and the performance reviews, how they impact your career. It can really, you get nervous because you're trying to hit other people's guideposts. You're hitting these, check boxes, so to say. And so I understand how hard that can be. Also knowing that in every organization, there is space for you as an individual. And that is what makes good organizations continue to shine. The toxic workplaces. Okay, so when they say, "Oh, you're not up for the job," oh, okay, like the passive aggressive ways. Toxic environments are tricky because the only way, it's kind of like narcissism, the only way to leave it is to actually get rid of the entire situation. However, you can remove yourself from some of those situations. So if it's the same people saying it over and over again, even just excusing yourself from those conversations. One year for Lent, I gave up complaining. And I only bring this up because I all of a sudden realized who my true coworkers were that I actually liked, because the people that only came to me to complain or to be toxic or to yell and like just like the negativity around the office, all of a sudden I was having only nice conversations for a little bit. So sometimes when you put yourself out there as saying, hey, this is my next standard, this is what I'm doing, sometimes that toxic workplace around you, it doesn't feel as toxic because you realize it was the people that were surrounding you versus the actual workplace. I know that doesn't answer everything. Sometimes I think the actual workplace can be truly toxic, but there is a difference between the toxic people that make up the workplace and then the workplace environment and culture itself. Somebody just said, I spoke on a stage in front of 100 people and I was shaking. Is there a way to stop shaking? I hold these funny little rocks. They're like $2 at Bernie's downtown. You can pick up a rock in any random place that if you wanted to. And I hold this when I'm public speaking. It gives my body something to ground myself. It's not a special rock at all. It's just a rock. This one happens to be kind of pretty, but I do find it's a really helpful tool to just say, hey, my body's fine. And you gives yourself something to do. Let's see here.
There was one other one, speaking of rocks.
Yeah.
Any suggestions on identifying your big rocks?
Mm. Well, one way, I mean, you could find a coach and help, walk through the right questions. You could even honestly go to a chat GPT source and figure out, okay, what are the questions I need to be asking myself? Because I think a lot of times, well, as a coach too, a lot of times you have the answers. Sorry, I should say, every single time you have the answers inside of you. I wholeheartedly believe that every person has the answers inside of themselves. They just might not be asking themselves the right question. So whether it's something with a health goal, something with trying to move your business forward, maybe you want to make a big change in your life, maybe you want a new relationship, ChatGPT can be a really good resource, and you can literally type in anything. I have a very personal relationship with my ChatGPT. I use the free one still. It doesn't have to cost you any money, but honestly, it's asking yourself the right questions, and you might be like, oh, what questions to ask myself? There's thousands. So I would love to work with you like specifically and think what questions would help you the most. But even things like what makes me smile without any effort? What are things I enjoyed doing as a child that I could still do now that I maybe haven't tried in a while? And you might be like, I like to rollerblade. That's not going to do anything. Okay, you like to rollerblade. Okay, when you're rollerblading, do some more thoughts come to mind? And then all of a sudden the person says, I haven't rollerbladed in 20 years. Like, go for a rollerblade. See if those thoughts start to come more fluidly. Because sometimes when we do the things that came in childhood so easily, when we do those things again, the answers start to come to us. Yeah, mentorship's amazing. And mentorship doesn't have to be paid. Mentorship can be a free resource that you are connecting with another human being. I'm almost 40 and I have a 6-year-old friend where we mentor each other for free. We go to coffee once a month, and she gathers stuff from her young friend, me, and I gather stuff from my wiser friend, her. And it's so cool to be able to have that conversation from 2 different perspectives and 2 different seasons.
Well, thank you so much for this insight. My notebook is so full, and there were a lot of moments where it's like, oh, yes, me too. And so thank you so much for all of your insight and tips and tricks, and just also permission to be where we are in our journey. And so I also appreciate everyone jumping on and learning alongside of me. I look forward to my Thursdays at noon. And so until next time, friends, the recording will be up on YouTube by the end of the week. And have a great day.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.